Welcome to Our National Conversation, a podcast in which we discuss politics from all angles. We are completely nonpartisan, and all views, respectfully stated, are welcome here. Our podcast is unique in that it is hosted and run by students who are focused on finding solutions to the biggest problems facing America.
Hello, everyone. I'm Taylor Lopez. Thank you all for joining us. And today we're going to be discussing the impact social media has had on the war of Iran. Specifically, information, misinformation, and conspiracy theories spread online during major global events. We'll also be talking about the recent assassination attempt and the online reactions that followed from different sides of the internet. So I just wanted to start off by asking, when there's major world events happening, how do you guys usually hear about them? Is it from social media or more like the traditional news outlets?
I'd say all social media. I don't even think I've seen a newspaper in the last 10 years other than like the one at the checkout line at the grocery store. So yeah, it's 100% YouTube for me, maybe, especially because everyone wants to get the jump on the story, obviously. So YouTube being 24/7, they can put it out whenever and even like update it or do live, what do you call it? YouTube Live. So I think that's the best way news is put out right now.
For me, I usually I'll see it first on social media. And usually what I'll do is, because of, misinformation and all of that stuff, is if it's of interest to me, then I'll go online and look at like the Associated Press, for example, to make sure that it's actually happening the way that it was portrayed. But I do see it at first on social media.
Why do you think people rely so heavily on social media first when it comes to like breaking news topics?
I think it's because what news media has turned into, let's say, for example, Fox News or CNN, is a lot of rage baiting and, in a way, just same topic over on a loop that they're not actually covering world news. They are beating a dead horse, basically, all day, constantly. You could say this, for example, because as someone that is in a house with conservative parents, if my mom, during Charlie Kirk's assassination or when Trump was almost assassinated for the first time, for 2 weeks straight at least, that's the only thing they talked about. And it was just incessant, which, don't get me wrong, somebody being shot at is a serious topic, but with so much changing in the world and that being the only discussion for what is supposed to be a major news media for not only America, but globally, it's no longer that accessible. And then you also find out, or it's been more of a conversation of all the news media companies being owned by certain entities and people, that it's like how much free journalism is actually going on. Whereas just like us, we're on social media, our nonprofit is, and we're trying to get out journalistic information, but we have a bit more freedom. No one owns us, and so whatever we're getting our sources, no one's telling us what we can or can't focus on. It's so that difference has now shifted to the social media being a bit more dependent in getting first news because there's such a variety of people sharing all throughout the world information.
Yeah, I get my news first is at X because I feel like that's where a lot of political news comes nowadays. And I also think the reason we depend on social media is we also use it for entertainment. So if you're looking at TikTok or X or Instagram for entertainment, suddenly there'll be other news that pops up that is political or something about the news. So I think that combination of entertainment and politics is what's made it very potent. And as has already been alluded to by Danny, there's a decentralization of the media through social media. So anyone can post on YouTube, on X. So news travels in some sense faster than centralized sources that were relied upon in legacy media.
When you see like this stuff come on like X or any like other social media platforms, do you typically like to trust the information given right away? Or are you more like, I'm going to look into it? Or would you rather just wait until more things are confirmed about it?
I believe the events. I don't believe any reason for the event or this person feels this way or like what are we in right now? Stages of negotiation. Did they submit like their terms or anything like that? No, I don't believe any of that. Like, did the event happen? I'll believe that. And then everything else I categorize as nonsense, because how can we really find out the truth?
I usually look further, kind of like what I said in the beginning is I'll always check on like a solid news source. The best ones for me are like AP, so Associated Press, and like PBS. Those are on the factual side.
Yeah, I would say that I check first after I see the post. I'll look for something more in depth. Like, for example, when the Epstein files came out, some of that stuff is so shocking, but we all have public access to go look at least what they released so far. And what you would see in that was crazy. And that, is being released by the FBI. So, and even, so much is redacted. So it's like, that's not even the full truth. And so now with Epstein stuff, information more and more coming out, I'm now less skeptical, because in the beginning it was like, whoa, is all this true? And when it's coming out of like, this is the information being shared, then you do get a little bit more trusting as it's been kind of right so far.
Focusing on like the war of Iran, like specifically being talked about online, like this has been going on for like months and months, like posting online at least. Do you think that social media has actually shaped the public understanding of this conflict, or is it very skewed?
Yeah, I think social media has totally made the entire public's perspective completely uncertain, because it's creating this kind of like what we were talking about with people being able to trust the media sources. It's since it started, it's the seeds of distrust have been planted on both sides. We've been seeing misinformation coming out on all over the place, and so it's definitely social media has made for a more problematic discourse than if it typically was before. But
Yeah, I think that people are drawn to the extremes, even if they're not extreme themselves, right? Politically, at least. I think that, people like shocking information. And so I think that's easier to get on social media, obviously. And I think it does shape the way that people view kind of the events that are going on. And it's not always correct, essentially.
Yeah, I feel like we weren't supplied in any other wartime of facts so quickly of what's going on, like death toll counts, who's died, who was responsible for what bombing, weapon, because we don't even have to wait for a presidential announcement for what transpired of what took place. We will find out right away because we have direct connection and ability to speak with people in other countries or see what they're posting. So, like, I mean, in my lifetime, considering, I'm was born in '02, so Obama was the first president I actually really paid attention to. And I remember it would be a big deal that he would announce that, we killed Osama bin Laden. And we found that out directly from him. But now in a more social media age, I guarantee we would have found that information out like a day before anything was said by the president, like immediately. So it is kind of crazy why we can be so involved, and it's because we have, even though not all information can be 100% completely true, we do have way more access to even knowing what is true also. So because we have that instantness of it, it makes it that much more addictive, I would say.
yeah, I'd say that news, media in general, but particularly news has become so commodified that like as Olivia was saying, that people are going to be drawn to the most shocking stuff, and so it's going to encourage media outlets to only post the most shocking stuff or portray what's going on as an extreme way, you know, to get that attention, you know, because it's just become so much of a commodity. And yeah, definitely like in that way has shaped the perspective to be extreme before even like, you know, people have even were able to decide what their opinions are. You know, a lot of people, you know, if you were asked before about a war in Iran, you know, they would have not even know enough information to have an opinion on it. And now people are already like, they're like, oh, well, they're like so committed, you know, because they've been fed such extreme information.
Yeah, I think another thing with social media, it's done okay, specifically with the situation of Iran, it makes people feel that they have to like immediately pick a side based on the videos that is posted. And before like being able to like just get like a general understanding of what's happening, a lot of conversations online stop becoming about the actual people affected by the event and turning into much deeper of a political argument or more of a like a viral discourse about it. And because everything is constantly moving so quickly online, you know, like all of this nuance kind of just disappears. And I don't know, I think people are rewarded more for having the strongest opinion than being more informed on one. Do you guys think that social media has made it harder for people to have like a balanced conversation about these serious like conflicts going on?
I think they've actually taken some data on the way that people are responding to like world events. And there are some people who, you know, are more than happy to talk about it. But from what I've read is a lot of people are censoring themselves in ways that they haven't had to before because they're afraid of being harassed because of their opinions, or you know, maybe it'll get back to whatever job they're working at that goes against their policy, and then they'll get fired from that. So there is a lot of censoring that's going on right now. Self-censoring, I should say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that that's become such a huge part of online culture, like right now, especially during, of course, Iran. But people are a lot more aware than anything when they're able to like post and spread quickly about these things, like having tons of screenshots. But those things can easily be taken out of context. So even when there's people wanting to have like a genuine conversation about like these world events, there's something that they're fearing of like these backlash comments or harassment or even like more professional consequences depending on like what they kind of say and who they are in like the media. I think social media has created like definitely an environment where people feel pressure to either stay completely silent or they have to have a strong opinion publicly, and there's not much of a in between for that. Do you think that there's a fear of being judged online, like that fear of being judged and is like really stopping people from having more honest conversations about these kinds of issues?
I would say 100% because, I mean, I'm going to say with the war with Iran, why the opinions are so strong and why people, I feel like, don't fear speaking out is also what has been transpiring between Israel and Palestine. That's been like a trickle down effect of enragement towards Israel for a lot of people. And so the fact that people feel that America got involved in the war with Iran because of Israel, that creates more hate towards that. And let's say Trump right now, people who voted for him, a lot of people are actually shifting their views because what he stood for as a candidate, and what he said he was going to do, he's gone back on some things. So a lot of people that endorsed him have gotten kind of quiet or have been kind of chastising him. So, for example, let's talk about Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan. Even them trying to speak out, saying that they no longer agree really where Trump's going. The entire public is telling them, no, stand on your business, stand for what you voted for. You voted for that guy. You're not allowed to backtrack at all on anything you said. So if people aren't allowed to shift their beliefs anymore, it's definitely going to make people hesitant to even speak out at all.
There's one guy, he's in sports. I won't say his name, but whatever. He on occasion he says like he has the right to reserve his judgment of some athlete or some team or whatever's going on. And he says that because he's making a decision on the data like available today. So if something comes out 2 weeks from now or whatever, he has the right to change his mind. So that sort of should be the case with politics. If we learn more about what people are doing, for better or worse, we should be able to move off our original choices.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a lot of honesty in the sense of like having a much healthier viewpoint now that you learn more information. I mean, that's how we grow. If we're very limited to one viewpoint and we just kind of stick to it based on either obligation or pride or whatever it may be, we're not able to like truly like develop and think for ourselves critically about these things. Now there's like ways we can obviously approach these conversations. And especially online, politically, it's almost like people are expected to stay completely loyal to whatever stance they kind of originally had, especially in politics. If you are either like on a presidential campaign or whatever, of course, it's expected to kind of stick to that. But again, if we're going to be tracking back on what we might have said, then of course there should also be room for that kind of growth. And with social media kind of like intensifying that because everything becomes more permanent, people can pull up these old posts or videos and have old opinions that they had. So it creates more pressure where you're admitting to where you change in your mind has seen like a weakness instead of growth. But do you guys think that social media has made politics more performative in a way where people feel like a pressure to defend a side publicly instead of actually reevaluating their own views in a private matter?
Just to add to that, I think the flaw is in thinking, that social media is the way we should engage, right? So I think that if people rely on social media, then yes, there's more public posturing. You don't want to lose an argument in public. So even if you think you're wrong or you're facing a difficult counter argument, you're less likely to agree that there's some changes that need to be made. I think that's where if people rely only on social media to have these discussions with people, then you're not going to have a productive discussion. I think some of my best discussions are in private because then you trust each other. It's not a battle. And that way you actually have something more productive. So I think the focus should be on moving away from social media for some of these discussions and recognizing that importance there. Yeah.
I agree completely. One thing that I've noticed with the, news mostly being portrayed on social media these days is, back when you had to pick up a newspaper or watch the news on TV, you weren't an active participant in this. Whereas on social media, you can have debates with people like right under the post and you can feel like you're contributing to the news. And I think that has a little bit, if not a lot, to do with the way that people interact or react, I guess you could say, to the news on social media.
Well, I'll say one of the only forms of power we kind of have as regular civilians, unless we have life-changing money in some way, is our voices. So even though we can advocate for maybe not every discussion is for social media, I think it is necessary to presence because it is us exercising our right and in a way keeping us all informed. Because the thing is even though I think legacy media did a lot of its damage, people were not as informed when it was just legacy media or did not care when it was just newspapers. Like my parents will even say like the comparison of our generation to theirs is no one at their age gave a hoot about politics whatsoever. So and now it's starting from a young age. And I'm not saying that every kid should have insane political exposure, social media exposure to this at such a young age, but I think if you want to feel like you're doing something and you're a part of the change, if your voice is all you have, then social media is going to be a thing. Where I'll say it's performative is where the platform culture came in, where it's like if you're an influencer and you have any sort of platform or following, you have to speak out on this or we're going to assume that you think the other. While I do think people that have the ability to reach others at a more extensive rate is an important thing, and I do believe in the importance of the platform, someone with a platform speaking out. At the same time, it depends. It's like we're making children famous these days, like with influencing. Why would you want to pressure a child into making statements in something they might not even be fully informed on or have an understanding of, because as you get older, your beliefs shift. I know I don't have the same beliefs I did of when I was 14, when it was Trump's first election, my freshman year of high school, versus now with him being the president in 2026. And I'll just say it, I'm not a fan, haven't been a fan, but growing up in a conservative household, obviously, I was taught things when he was first running that I didn't think were as bad as I do now. So it's just there's so much shifting in time, and I think trying to hold very young people accountable, and I just think children are affected by social media the most in this political era and are damaged by the free speech thing more than anything. But at the same time, I don't think the conversation should leave social media.
Yeah, I completely agree. I guess one thing that's like really important is the matter how like social media has kind of created the, like you kind of mentioned it already, Danny, but the expectation that everyone has to immediately speak on these major events. And if they don't, these people get almost like that silent treatment online, or like people automatically like push that onto them. But it's really just not everyone, like you mentioned, especially younger creators, can fully understand these topics that they're being pressured to speak on. I think that also social media makes people feel that they need to have like a fully formed opinion off the bat, even if their beliefs like can naturally like change over time. And when people are constantly online, are able to like form such like a kind of like weird grasp of it at such a young age, especially like if they're younger and they're still like developing all of their like beliefs in their own ways. But there's also like a question of like how much should we put in their face depending on someone's age. And I completely agree that these conversations shouldn't completely like leave the social media platforms either, because for a lot of people it's still like one of their main of being informed. And people should exercise like their voice publicly. The challenge is figuring out how to encourage these open conversations online without it turning into like a public outrage, I guess, or like the pressure or harassment, I guess, online. After like the recent assassination attempt of Trump, right? There's like conspiracy theories like being spread out online almost like immediately from multiple different perspectives. What do you guys think people are like so quick to believe or share their theories during these major events?
Can you rephrase the question? Like, what do we think about like, do we think it was real or?
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Why do you think people are so like quick to believe these theories during these major events?
I think people are quick to believe it because it comes from someone who is hired by and works for the government. So we still have that internal mechanism where if Uncle Sam or government, whoever says this, then it must be true. They wouldn't lie to us. They wouldn't spin it. Especially we add to that, if you put something in an incident report or whatever, it's on a government document. So if you're lying, now that's like, I don't know if it's a felony or something, but like you're lying on a government document. So like internally, based on growing up in school and always tell the truth and that stuff, we're like, no, these are government people. They wouldn't lie to us. Like, I think at our core, we still wish and hope for that to be true. So when something like an assassination attempt comes out, it's like, there's no way they'd stretch the truth that much to where it's completely ridiculous, because that means multiple people perjured themselves on a government document, and multiple people choreographed this bullet red paint incident, blah blah blah. So I don't know if it's the ultimate letdown if we find out something like that was staged. So I think internally we hope it's more true than not. Otherwise, we all have a midlife crisis or something, or we riot, at the White House or whatever.
I'd like to bring the opposite perspective to that. And I think that we know that trust in the government has gone down quite a bit over the last few years. And I feel like people are inclined to believe conspiracy theories, so they don't feel like they're being tricked by the government. They don't have trust in it. And so they're forming their own theories that make sense to them. And they know that it didn't come directly from the government, kind of thing. So,
Yeah, Olivia, I completely agree with you. I just think that with what our generation has, and like, let's say the Epstein, like, sorry to bring it up again, but the Epstein files, it names so many people who are politically affiliated and have been important past presidents. What the lobbying that goes on, the spending. There has been so many reasons proven why we should not trust the government as of recent. I think with especially social media, information we've had access to, and deeper journalism, independent journalism's the length that has gone to, and the growth social media has had for independent journalism, it's created a way more distrust. And like you said, Olivia, like, no one wants to be like tricked by the government, so they're just gonna immediately assume that they're lying, and this is in some way being plotted for another event, for a distraction, because everyone talks about that, like the government doing things to distract us from other events going on, which I honestly believe in somewhat. So especially because it's like you won't see them speaking out or avoiding conversations that the public wants to have, but they'll talk and yammer about gender politics or something way more because they know that's just distraction material. So
Yeah, just to add, I think to the point Olivia made, I do think part of it is distrust in government, as other people have also said, but I also think it's partisanship. So regarding the shooting, there was a stat that showed that 1 in 3 Democrats believed that the shooting was staged, and it was 1 in 8 Republicans that believed the shooting was staged, right? And then if you look at January 6th or look at the 2020 election, Republicans are more likely to say the 2020 election was stolen. Democrats are less likely to believe in that idea. So I think part of it is people just believe, they claim that they believe something based on what they want to believe rather than what they necessarily actually believe. So if I say that I believe the 2020 election was stolen, I might not truly believe it, but I connect with my tribe, and therefore I claim I believe it. So I think that's part of the analysis. And I don't think it has to do with social media per se. It has to do with tribalism and what group you belong to.
I think somebody that also got this culture fired up more recently too would be Candace Owens, because of her speaking out about Charlie Kirk's assassination and basically who was actually responsible, calling that shooter kind of a staged or not the real guy, and that Israel was out to get Charlie Kirk because he did not bend the knee. And so that kind of started this whole people are being bought, things are staged, assassinations could be staged. It's people, I think, also believe this Trump's second assassination attempt was staged because the first one brought so much fire to that political community. I think that people could say it's them trying to bring that fire back. Because, I mean, if you remember the photos of him, like, standing up after it, like, grazed his ear and stuff, people were posting that everywhere as if he's, like, the revolution, like, and whatever, and whatnot. And so, obviously, MAGA has been upset with some of the stuff Trump has done yet soon. So people might assume, especially with the theories Candace Owen puts out there, as well as like other podcasters and independent journalists putting things out there, that Trump or MAGA, that whole franchise, could be trying to incite once again that fire from the first assassination attempt by doing it a second time. And because, especially with what Trump said after, it's like, well, any president that's been assassinated in the past has been really likable and was doing a great job. Like, you know, because that, and it's like, so I don't know, it's just choosing to be, politics are very careful with words, you know, there is a lot of smart, evil stuff. We, for already as the general public feel like we're always voting between the lesser of two evils. So it's not that you can really trust they're always in thinking of good intentions.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think like another thing that's like changed is that the way the news has become more personality driven than it's used to be. People aren't just like following information anymore, and they're following more specific individuals that they trust and agree with or feel connected to emotionally rather than their viewpoint or what they stand for. So when creators are online, personalities give their take on like a political event or like these conflict, audiences really do absorb that perspective before even looking to like a traditional like reporting or verified information. And of course that raises another interesting question, because a lot of younger audiences today that are getting their news from influencers, content creators, streamers, whoever may be, instead of traditional journalists. Do you think that changes the way people understand like today's world events? And is there a standard that we should be setting for our journalists to be sharing this information like online?
I think there is a standard online, but I don't think we'll ever get there, just because, like, I'm thinking a doctor, their standard is licensed in the state to do whatever they're doing. A journalist, how can you really impose such a standard on them? And now with like everyone calling themselves a journalist, which is fine, I have no problem with that. Like, we can't, how do we impose a standard on 100,000 new journalists on social media? It's a bit difficult. So I think it's going to remain the way it is for a while. And as far as trusting news from people we have an emotional connection to, that's going to continue. But I do want to point out, there are some people doing it the right way. So I'm thinking like Dr. Mike, he's a doctor. He actually talks about things going on and he's like, yeah, don't do this for these reasons. Or yes, this is actually appropriate because A, B, and C. So hopefully we get more qualified journalists, like, not like him because he's a doctor, but yeah, like sort of in that mindset to help, push through the negative.
Things have also become, instead of informational news, it's become opinion-based news. And everybody wants to just be the first to get their opinion out there and their perspective, as if they originally came up with the idea themselves. That when the best news you could give is strictly informational without bias. And like Dave said, who we gave an example, they have this A, B, and C thing. You can give informational news and then also share this could be the possible effects if we are to continue on this path. That's not opinion. Opinion would be like how much it upsets you and like getting and inflicting that emotional side of people. That's what got legacy media. That's what got our society so partisan, was that legacy media split and was emotionally enraging people. It's like the ethos, pathos, logos. You want your ethics and your logic within your information, but as soon as you add the emotion, it's gonna sway people. It's the same way that even though someone could be in trouble, if they cry because they're guilty, you'll forgive them easier. So as long as you appeal to emotion, there's this manipulation and information for sure.
And social media like continues to constantly shape the public opinion. Are there any changes that you guys would like to see in how information is shared online?
Okay. Yes. I gotta say this carefully. I've always had this thought where First Amendment, freedom of speech, obviously, but we do have rules to where if you take it too far, there are consequences. So I think that should kind of be pushed across all of social media within the US. And if someone says something that's so far-fetched, outlandish, whatever, and if it's not stated as their opinion, like if they don't put those words in there should be a penalty. If they're under 18, obviously kids saying whatever, they're going to be doing community service on the weekend and they'll learn their lesson. If they're adults, like it could be more severe. That'll get rid of a lot of this trolling rage bait thing to where we call people the most heinous names or where we make up things that are like 100% untrue. So again, First Amendment, I'm for it. But if something's bordering on the line of what do you call it? Help me out here.
Hate speech,
Hate speech, but also,
discrimination,
there's two of them.
misinformation.
There's when you slander or
forget to,
defamation, I guess, against like other people and other people who hold events or something like that. Like when it goes that far online, I think we should be more judicial in how we deal with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say what really started that, what Dave, I actually really agree with you, and I think something that's started to happen, which is going to be productive in American society, is the FBI will show up to your house if you are tweeting things about shooting up schools. I think, because there's been this like incel culture and whatnot, or like the rage bait culture where people will just drop really crazy stuff. Like I remember being in high school and there was the killer clowns accounts coming out, and I went to an all-girls school and I had a brother school, and some guys at the brother school would make clown accounts saying that they were going to come to the school and kill certain girls and stuff like that. So now the thing is, the FBI used to say they couldn't do anything about that because the law said you couldn't do anything about it because it's free speech. But now, because there's been so many atrocities, they're kind of figuring out there is definitely a limit on what you can say, because if these people are saying these things, they truly believe and are capable of committing and acting them out. So I totally agree with you, Dave, that there needs to be a threshold on how far you can go with what you say.
I do think that, there should be definitely a limit, like as we're all saying, but I think it's a little like odd that, and it seems almost like convenient that all these people have been saying crazy stuff, and then rightfully so, then the FBI gets called on them, but then simultaneously somebody can say something, disagreeing with a certain country and phrasing it a way that, if somebody else were to say it about, a different country in a normal joking way, it would have no other consequences. But because it's such a sensitive topic, then they get in trouble or they get fired from their job or something like that. And so I feel like, we're hearing a lot about, people saying all these outlandish stuff. And so to kind of make it so we're okay with censorship, because we're like, yeah, of course, people are talking about shooting up schools, we should be censoring that. But then, and simultaneously, while allowing, censorship like that, it kind of will give leeway for people being censored for political ideas and stuff.
Yeah, I almost feel bad for like employers now, because like I know in government the general rule is you can't talk about religion or politics because like people get so emotionally invested. You don't want to divide the workplace or like isolate or ostracize anyone. So with employers, like private employers, I kind of imagine it to be the same way. So if you're not talking about sports or how your kid's doing on their latest exams or something like that, or the summer barbecue, you can't really engage in too many conversations. So that's it's not that off topic, but it's like I can see how politics is a no-stop shop for a lot of employers, because then I don't want to work on this machine with this person anymore because they voted for this person, or they're not mad that gas prices are affecting them as is me, or some nonsense like that. So Yeah, it's a bit weird right now.
Well, as much as we are trying to find that middle ground, I know we're a bit scattered, but moving forward, I'm sure, or at least I hope, that there's going to be some movement into what we as people should feel like obligated and restricted on, but to also like just make it fair to the public. I think that this conversation was great. So thank you all for being a part of it and sharing your own perspectives. Today's discussion really showed how much social media influences the way that people experience these global events, from opinions to respond to information online, and whether it's the news, or if it's conspiracy theories or different platforms, that they're able to continue to shape the public understanding in powerful ways. So thank you guys again for listening, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast was brought to you by Our National Conversation, a place where students generate policy solutions to the biggest problems facing America. Join us in freeing political dialogue from hyperpartisanship. To learn more about what you heard today, check us out at ournationalconversation.org. You can also follow us on social media at Our National Conversation to show your support and keep up with our latest efforts.